Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Derek Alessi, and he goes by the term of Dr. Derek. He's a PhD, and welcome, Derek, to the show. How are you doing today?
Very well, Joe. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure, and as we've discussed, this is a show that's focused on healthy living, and I believe that the topics of your book and your products and everything that you have to bring is well aligned with this. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what brings you here?
Yeah, so just to give you a little background information, I'm calling you right now from Buffalo, New York.
All right.
I'm not sure if you know this, Joe, but Buffalo is widely considered the health and fitness capital of the world.
I did not know that.
Nobody else did either, so it's okay. It's an awesome place, though, but nobody is claiming that it's the health and fitness capital of the world. When it comes to health, when it comes to fitness, when it comes to nutrition, you look back at it and you say, how did we get where we are? How did we get to pushing 70% obesity? How do we get to 1 out of 3 diabetics? How do we get to some of these terrible things that are happening right now? And it really can shake you to the core, and it's hard to believe. However, but it doesn't have to be that way. People can take control of their own health. They can be empowered to take control of their own health as long as they're given a consistent message of how to do it. Now, unfortunately, in the school systems, and I'm a huge advocate of education. In fact, I relate a lot of what I do to the school systems as well, because when students come to see me, they want to improve their grades too, Joe.
Sure.
So many people, their grades might be their weight, it might be their body fat percent, it might be their medications, their diseases, their health, their fitness, their energy, and they want to improve it. And of course, being a teacher, you have to do the right classwork, you have to do the right homework, and you have to
Right.
do it consistently with evaluations, and you'll watch your grade point average improve. So it's the same type of mindset, but unfortunately, when it comes to that, it's not introduced into education as spelling might be, as writing might be, as math might be. So it's a good opportunity for people to finally take control of their health as long as they have the tools and the blueprint to pull it off.
Yeah, I think that there's so much information out there in the world today, combined with disinformation, that it's so difficult. Like when we were growing up, I think we're probably near the same age bracket, at least the same generation. You know, there were some pretty cut and dry ways to be healthy. And, you did your exercise and you got your sleep and you ate your good, strong breakfast. And generally, as I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, and there weren't very many obese people walking around. You go to the beach and everybody was in good shape. And occasionally there was a fatty running around, but, frankly, it was uncommon as it is today common. So what's changed?
It's interesting because I was one of those uncommon heavy people.
All right.
So when people ask, did you always know you're going to be an exercise scientist? And my PhD is exercise science. My master's degree is in nutrition. And the answer is no, I did not at all. In fact, when I started undergrad, I was going to dental school. So that was my goal. So people ask, of course, well, why did you want to be a dentist? And it was twofold. Number one is I had an uncle who was a dentist, and he was my favorite uncle, and I was following in his footsteps. And number two is I was 244 pounds as
Oh,
an
wow.
undergrad, and that was in 1989.
All
Now,
right.
that is about 75 pounds ago. So I didn't start off as the health and fitness person. In fact, far from it. Now, luckily, I did fall in love with exercise science as a way out, and I had to take it as prerequisites. But for me, it was transformative. It helped me change my life. It helped me change my fitness. And then, of course, I've dedicated a career to helping others do the same type of thing. So that's my background. When you ask what has changed over the years, correct. I think it's much easier to be under the influence of poor nutrition right now and poor lifestyle than ever before. There's so many things. I think it's easy to sit back and say, well, Americans are lazy. I don't see that. And the reason why I say that and once again, this is I guess a point of opinion, but I see people trying. I see people doing umpteen different diets, joining health clubs, buying home exercise equipment, Pelotons, Fitbits, Garmin's, taking GLP-1, shooting Ozempic, doing all these different things. They're trying. They're just not doing a program that would give them overall success. So once again, back to our school analogy, I might be a bad student, but I could cram and
Right.
maybe pass an exam. Maybe I can do decent in an exam if I cram. I get the cliff notes, I stay up for 2 nights straight, I cram, but I didn't become a good student. I just crammed during that exam. And I think people take that mindset too. I have to lose 20 pounds, I have to lose 50 pounds. And they pin it to these short-term goals. But
Right.
instead of doing that, if they took the approach, I'm a good student, I'm a healthy person, I do what healthy people do, I do what fit people do, and I'm going
Right.
to copy that behavior. And if they took that approach, they would find they wouldn't have to worry about their grades.
I totally agree. I think it has to do with a lifestyle approach rather than a specific goal. I know 50 or 6 or 7 years ago, I lost 50 pounds, and I realized that it wasn't an option for me to go back to that because my dad passed away. He was a surgeon, and I grew up in the medical world and all the medical stuff. And my dad died obese, diabetic, liver failure, and it was also preventable. And at one moment, I had an epiphany that said, "Oh crap, this is going to be me." And I began a journey that will never end because I realized it wasn't about that weight; it was about my behavior. But it took such a giant wake-up call, such as, my father dying and me getting that awareness that, oh, I was walking on the same road he was walking on. Most people don't get that wake-up call, you just slowly slide into this place and and then now we live in this world where there's so much information everywhere. Like everybody's the guru, everybody's the guy with the answer, this program, that program, biohacking and all this stuff. How does somebody find the truth in all this?
It's difficult. In
Yeah,
fact, I'm going to say, looking and hearing your story, I think you're fortunate
yeah.
because you did identify what you had to change. Many people never identify what they have to change. I have many clients, and I've been in this practice now for 30 years. I have many clients that even do suffer a heart attack,
Mhm.
that do need bypass, that do have liver failure, that do have diabetes, and they still don't change their way. Because you would say, well, if something bad happened, that would be such a
Right.
big event.
Of
I
course I would.
Right, of course. But no, same type of thing. If I fail a class in school, same type of thing. Well, I'm not going to quit school entirely, right? So it's the same type of thing. So I think you're fortunate for finding it and finding it early on. So I think that's great. I do want to give you a lot of applause for that.
Thank you.
In terms of where does a person start? Well, here's something that you necessarily won't find in a typical book, but I believe a person really should start with themselves.
Mhm.
You have to look at yourself because so often people like to worry about the external environment. Now is a good time to lose weight. Now is a bad time to lose weight. It was the holiday season. I'm busy. I'm stressed. My kids are all over the place. My work, it's a ton of hours. They're looking at the outside. But if they
Right.
took a second, Joe, if they took a second and say, you know, what do I really want for my life? What do I want for myself? What kind of energy do I want? What kind of body do I want? What kind of longevity do I want for me? Now, some people will say, I couldn't possibly say that. That would be selfish.
Right.
So self-care is not being selfish. In fact, you could help no other if you do not help yourself. You're not going to be able to. So start with yourself. Ask yourself the questions, what kind of body do I want? What kind of health do I want? What kind of person do I want to be? And then from there, I don't think there's a one size fits all for everybody. So people can get in amazing shape taking different approaches. You could take the approach of, I'm going to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day exercising. Some people do that and they're successful, but it is difficult to pull off. It's extremely time consuming. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, and it's not the optimal place for a lot of people. Other people can say, you know what, I'm just going to cut my calories down to ultra low calories. So 5, 6, 700 calories a day. I'm going to count my calories, count my points, starve, skip meals, all these things. And they might have some short-term gains, but eventually they can't sustain that. So I always like to try to build something with a little bit more balance. Yes, you want to do the right kind of exercise. Yes, nutrition is crucial. You're not going to get anywhere without good nutrition. And lastly, though, you do want to be consistent. Remember the school analogy. I can't just cram for one exam. I want to be a good student. So I have to do this with consistency, like brushing my teeth or taking a shower.
100%. And I think that, there's so many variables in our lives. We we single out a handful of them to be constants. Like you said, we wake up in the morning, we brush our teeth. Why? Because we know if we don't do that, we're going to have major medical problems and eventually have no teeth, and it'll be uncomfortable, unpleasant, and unhealthy. So we get programmed from a young age, make sure and brush your teeth every day, and we do that. There's a handful of other tasks that we do, but when it comes to the important things like eat and sleep and stress and all of these other things, most of us don't have a hard, fast, well, I do this every morning because it's part of my regimen. We always, I think there's a lot of the bad habit, addictive behavior that sort of drives us with our desires and reasons for putting things off. And we, like you were mentioning earlier, we come up with excuses, a million ways to do something or not do something. And if we don't have it as a hard, fast regimen, like I wake up in the morning and I hit the ground and do 50 push-ups before I do anything. If I don't have that as my regimen, I probably won't do it. I'm going to wake up and come up with every reason that today I'm going to do something else, but I'll get back to that tomorrow.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. And the most exciting thing that I could think of is the fact that we are the architects, we are the designer. We can pick and choose what we want. So this is what I really love about this whole thing is we do get caught up in the external environment, but this is an internal game. And you could have whatever you want. And there is no one that can stop you if you decide to do it. So if you decide to wake up in the morning and do 50 push-ups, if you decide to drink water with all of your meals, if you decide to cut back on sugars and carbs, if you decide those things, you totally have the control to be able to do it, which is so exciting because you can make the difference in your life. So I think being in this industry, and I think you might agree with me, is sometimes we take the stance of what society should do better, and that's fine. It's fun to talk about that. One of the things I try to always talk about with my clients and with my customers at Strength Genesis is what can you do for yourself today that will make a big difference to the most important person in your life, which is you. So
100%.
do those things and you're going to improve you.
100%. Now, and since 2000, you've written, it looks like I see that you've written 3 books. Is that correct?
You know, it's sometimes difficult to put a number to it only because I do a bunch of digital books too and
Oh, got
cookbooks,
it.
so on
Okay.
and so
So
forth.
3 published books that went out in traditional press. How about that?
Traditional press, that sounds great.
All right.
Yeah.
And you wrote the Bermuda Triangle Diet. That was your most recent one. And then you have Lose Fat Forever and the Promise Health and Fitness System back in 2002. And you started out with this Promise Health and Fitness System, and you went on into exploring weight control, I guess would be a good term for it, um, through diet. Well, Lose Fat Forever, I didn't read it. I don't know what it's about. So why don't you walk us through this timeline of, you start out with this Promise Health and Fitness System. I'm assuming it has something to do with diet and exercise, but that's an assumption on my part.
It doesn't have to be. Yeah, no, it's a good assumption because the promise is the promise you're making to yourself. So that's
Right.
really what the promise is. And that was my first foray in jumping into the book. And then I came out with what I thought was a super improved version, which was Lose Fat Forever. Now, there's a story behind Lose Fat Forever. So when that came out in 2003, it was, keep in mind, at the time, you couldn't print a book without a traditional print house. You needed a publisher.
Right.
Where nowadays you probably wouldn't use it unless there were special circumstances. You would print on demand or print yourself. So I was pitching my book to different publishers at the time, And I got a lot of traction, and I got a lot of people that really, really liked it. And the initial orders were coming in, and it was exciting. However, they wanted to take a title and they wanted to really blow it up with the company that I was working with at the time, which was called Rodale, who wrote all the magazines. They did Muscle and Fitness. They did all the big stuff, right? Fit magazine and all those ones that we grew up reading all the time. And they had a group of books that they were pitching, and they were going to pick one as a champion. And the champion book, and I was up for consideration for it, which I thought was awesome. And I really wanted this award, and I didn't get it. It was given to the South Beach diet.
Oh, no.
I was up against the South Beach diet at the time, which, by the way, we have a very similar type of approach to it.
All right.
But I lost out to the South Beach diet.
That one had good marketing.
Great marketing. It was wonderful. It was a huge bestseller. So when I came back and I wrote the Bermuda Triangle diet, it was my own humor poking fun at my experience, saying, oh, that's the South Beach diet. I'm going to write this book. It's going to be about health, fitness, and nutrition, but we're going to talk about the Bermuda Triangle. We're going to talk about, it's not South Beach anymore. It's not different types of Mediterranean diet. It's the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, so what happens in the Bermuda Triangle? Well, you disappear and sink, right? You're going to go off radar. You're going to sink. So I took the approach of all of the things that people go through that really gets them lost. And that is all of the fads, remember the shake weight?
Oh, yeah.
Right? All of the belly blasters, the Thigh Master.
Yeah.
Look, no disrespect to Suzanne Summers. I thought she looked wonderful in the infomercial.
Right.
In fact, I still think of it to this day. But you're not going to get in awesome shape with any of these gadgets or one type of thing. So the Bermuda Triangle diet, I kind of went about it saying, we don't want to get lost. We don't want to get sunk. We don't want to go off the radar forever. We want to make sure that we're getting to our goal. So we're still doing it. I just try to interject some humor along the way.
Nice. It keeps people's attention, that's for sure. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that any of these devices or gadgets have is, they work as long as they're interesting. But, I have this theory about garden therapy, and I believe that it works so well because you don't get bored of it. And you just get out there in the garden and work. It doesn't really matter what you do because you're working and you're moving and you're breathing clean air and you're getting outside and you're expressing your range of motion. You're all of these things. It doesn't really matter what activity you're doing. And I think that a lot of these things you're talking about keep coming back to that same point. Like we get bored, we get tired, we don't want to do that one thing that's supposed to work, and we come up with reasons not to do it.
Yeah, no, of course. And, we all want these quick fixes, Joe. Who doesn't? You want something, you want it quick, you want it fast, you want it effortless, you want all these things. So the approach that I've taken, not just with my private practice, but also with my supplement company, Strength Genesis, is we're not going to do that. I want to give you quality things. I want to give you high quality, best premium product I can possibly give you to help your journey long term.
Nice.
Right. So that might not sound the sexiest when you talk about it, because we all want something where we could lose 20 pounds in 20 seconds, like a Kardashian diet or something like that. But instead of taking that quick short-term approach, let's put the right foods in your body. Let's put the right supplements. So when it comes to supplementation and people ask me about it, it's not about pills. It's not about injectables. It's not about that. It's about food. So my company, Strength Genesis, is a food company. So in there, what we do is we sell food products. And by food products, everything from cooking oil, salad dressings, the highest quality protein, New Zealand grass-fed protein that you can get to help your health. Not pills, not drugs, not gimmicks, just quality information and quality products.
So let's explore this Genesis company. It sounds very interesting. What got you started, putting out foods? There's no shortage of food companies. There's no shortage of supplement companies out there. What made you think that you had something unique and special to bring to market?
Like a lot of people in this field, I did sell protein powders and supplements and fish oils for a long time. It was always somebody else's brand. And you get to wondering, I wonder if I could put together a product that had this and that in it, or if I mixed these two things together, or what if this existed, or what if that existed? Because there were certain things that I wanted, and I wanted the convenience of it, but they weren't commercially available at the time. So that was the start of the whole process. Secondly, I always thought, can I do something to a higher degree of quality than what's currently on the market? So when I see the supplement industry, it's highly confusing. It's probably just as confusing as the whole health, fitness, nutrition market, too. If you walk into a supplement store right now, try not to get confused. Everyone looks fantastic. There's miles and miles of product. And the best thing you could do is ask for help by some college kid that's sitting behind the counter.
Right.
There's no direction. You don't know what to do, don't know what to take. So I wanted to create the education behind the highest quality products and why they're important. And that's essentially what we did. So I started off, my very first product was something called Australian macadamia nut oil. Have you ever used it before?
Have not.
So I was turned on to it a little over 10 years ago. The author Tim Ferriss wrote a very big book called The 4-Hour Body. And in the book, Tim was talking about this new olive oil. This new olive oil. So it was even better for you in omega-3 fats than olive oil, which is no small claim because olive oil is a great oil.
Sure.
But it held up to a higher smoke point. It was easier to cook with, better to cook with, because the problem with olive oil is if you exceed 350 degrees, it smokes and it renders it a bad oil.
Right.
So it was a more versatile olive oil. So I tried this macadamia nut oil. It had to be Australian macadamia nut oil, and it was delicious. It was wonderful. My family loved it. So I started buying some more bottles and I started giving it out to some of my private clients as a perk, being such a good client. And what happened was they asked me, can I get them more? So I started buying more of this macadamia nut oil and more of it and more of it and more of it. And I have a pretty good sized practice in upstate New York. But then over maybe about a year, year and a half, it wasn't in supply anymore. I had a harder and harder time getting it. So one day, picked up the phone, called the refinery in Queensland, Australia. And I got somebody on the phone and I said, hey, I'm trying to buy some of your products that your refinery does. The supplier I usually get it from, I can't get them to respond. What do I do? And they said, oh, well, they no longer carry our brand anymore. We don't have a US supplier. Would you be willing to be one?
Wow.
I said, no, I'm not willing to be a supplier. I'm not supplying grocery stores and health stores.
Right.
I'm not doing. I'm just looking to buy and sell it for myself.
Yeah.
And I said, would you just sell me some oil? And they
Right.
said, "Bet, be happy to. How much are you looking for? Now, mind you, at the time, Joe, I was up to sometimes buying 50, 60 bottles at a time. But now I'm
What size
talking,
bottles? Just out of curiosity. I'm a formulator too, so I know that this supply chain issue can be a nightmare sometimes.
it was very difficult, very challenging. And these are bigger bottles, they're 17-ounce bottles. So 500 milliliters. So it was a big
Okay.
size. It was the size of a bottle of wine. So I would say, well, I know I'm talking to the refinery. I normally place orders in the neighborhood of 50 bottles or so. I'm sure you have a minimum, I don't know, 100, 150, 200. What's your minimum?
Right.
And I heard silence on the other end.
They're thinking 10,000.
They said, we only sell it by the metric ton.
Right.
I said, metric ton? I said, well, how is that in bottles? They said, it's not.
Right.
It's
No, it's in big totes. Yeah.
big totes. And I said, well, what do I do with that? And they said, well, you'd purchase it from us and we'd float it across the Pacific for you.
Right.
And I said, then what? He said, well, then you have to get a license. You have to be a broker, have a broker's license because it's got to clear customs.
Right.
And I said, then what? And they said,
Right.
well, you have to have a bottling company. You have to send it to the bottler. I said, okay. And then I could just put it. They said, oh, no, no, no. You can't just put it on the shelves. You have to have a label, and the label has to be FDA compliant.
Right.
You have to have all of your sales taxes in issue and all of your certificates and so on and so on. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I'm 19 steps above my head here.
Think on any of this. Yeah.
Right. So that was my first foray into it. And now, boy, we probably bring in 30 metric tons a year.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's fantastic. Well, listen, I know that you produce a number of products. We're running a little low on time. I want to invite you, though. I think we have a lot to talk about. If you ever want to come back and go deep into any one of these topics, I would welcome you back to this show. I think that I like to explore things both broadly and deeply. Out of all the products that you have, first of all, how many products do you in total offer the public right now?
We have 12 key products right now on the website. And maybe the second part to the question is right now our biggest seller of all time is that Australian macadamia nut oil. But
Nice.
currently our hottest product for the holiday season and in January is we have this ridiculously delicious keto salad dressing.
Oh, nice.
Is made with 100% olive oil, and it's the only salad dressing I've ever had that you do not have to refrigerate after opening. Keep it
Nice.
right on the counter, no soybean oil, and no sugar whatsoever in it. There is no carbs, so it is keto.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, listen, Derek, I've really enjoyed this conversation. And before I give you a chance to pitch your website and all the ways people can reach you, we touched on a lot of things that have to do with health and wellness and diet and all of this. If somebody comes to you and says, look, I can only do one thing, what would it be? What's your one tip that you would offer anybody that came to you if there was just one thing they could do only?
Eat better. Eat better. Make nutrition your priority because what you put in your mouth is within your control.
100%. I totally agree with that. It's the one thing we all have to do, and we have choices. So, you're hitting a new audience. People are listening to you, going, "Wow, I like this guy. I like what he says." How the heck do they find your products?
StrengthGenesis.com. That's StrengthGenesis.com. All of our information. And once again, I'm a big believer in trying to give you the right information. So it's not just a website like a Vitamin Shop GNC type of a thing. You're going to find a lot of research, a lot of articles, and a lot of how to use these products and why they're beneficial in the most premium products you can get with sustainable packaging, I should add. I don't put anything in plastic. Think about
Nice.
the last time you saw a protein powder that wasn't in plastic. I put it in metal. It's in aluminum. We
For
don't want
you.
plastic in our body. So at strengthgenesis.com, you will see all of that and so much more.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Derek. It's been a very a pleasurable conversation here, and I think that you fit well into this program. And I encourage all of our listeners to check out your site. And thank everybody for participating in this project that we call the Healthy Living Podcast. And we will see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.